America. Contra-Dictions coming back at you with episode 9. I got Glennon with me. There he is. Kenny with me. We got a lot to talk about tonight. Some some debates on a whole lot of things going on. We got Dems kneeling, wearing garments. I don't know. We got a whole lot of issues going on. Kenny, you want to start us off? What you got for us?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, as long as we're calling stuff on both sides, which is what we want to do here, I just think we've got to be able to keep it, as real as possible. So I think there's a lot of good, productive stuff that'll be talked about. I think that may be coming solution based. Some of the things that we've actually talked about on this show. So, but I'm going to hold bullcrap of, if you're virtue signaling through your photo op, I'm gonna call you out on that too. So.
Glenn, how about you give us some introduction, boss? What you got going on for tonight, man? How you feeling?
Feeling great. Absolutely. Yeah, if we got virtue signaling going on, whether you're standing in front of a church or whether you're wearing kente clothing, you're going to get called out on it. Absolutely. So 100% agree with you there. We got a few other things that we're going to be getting into tonight. We're going to be talking about the Police Justice Act of 2020, amongst other things. So let's do it, guys. Let's get into it.
Sweet. So, Kenny, what topic you want to talk about first tonight, brother?
Okay, first I wanted to talk about the 2020 Act that Glenn just brought up. It's called the Justice and Policing Act of 2020. It's a piece of legislation that about 4 Democrats actually wrote. They co-signed it all the way along the list, but I believe it had 3 to 4 main writers, Senator Cory Booker being one of them. I actually think there's a lot of good in it. I do. I think there's some concerns that I have. But if we want to go, we can kind of go topic by topic. I know one of the things that I saw was, that I'm feeling good about is that granting the AG power to go after institutions that they find are systematically oppressing people. So to me, I think that's a good step in the right direction. That's policing the police to me. And it would mean that you have to, if you're dealing with the Attorney General, I would assume that you have to have some real data there. So I like that. I like the accountability there. I like the idea. So I'll go ahead and pass that one off to you, and we'll just go ahead and tennis some back and forth, Glenn.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the idea. I believe the Policing Justice Act of 2020 definitely holds police accountable, and that is the idea of it. It also bans chokeholds. It bans no-knock warrants, which I think is great.
Only bans the no-knock warrants on drug arrest.
On drug arrest, exactly. So I mean, let's get into that for a second, because I don't know about you. We've talked about it before in previous episodes, but if I'm a drug dealer, that almost kind of sounds like that's going to be my best friend. I mean, the last thing police want to be doing is rolling up like with the sirens going on, or knocking on the door so that the drug dealers can say, "Hey, let me flush my stuff real quick." So how do you guys feel about that?
Well, I'll tell you what somebody told me that I think is the right thing. I think you can still do it catching people coming and going. I think you can do it non-lethally. Let's say in the Breonna Taylor case, if the next morning they're waking up, ass crack of dawn, you can go ahead and knock, announce yourself, and at 5 o'clock in the morning, you're not going to have time to even get your bearings together to dump all your drugs or run. So you could do it at 5:30 in the morning with non-lethal, and you could bang, bang, bang. You could certainly surround the place. I'd rather have that happen than us go in bucking shots. So it's something that I do understand can be friendly for drug dealers, but for me, from my libertarian point of view, I think your individual rights are just too important, and to not negotiate that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, of course, right? So we don't want police just having total control. We have rights too, right?
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, again, it bans chokeholds. It mandates the use of dashboard cameras and body cams to federal offices, and requires state and local law enforcement to use existing federal funds to ensure the use of police body cameras. So I like that one as well too. We talked about it before in the past, and I still believe that the citizen should have the right to request that it be turned off. Outside of that, I think police should be mandated to have it on.
How about the counter argument, right? When you go into Walmart, you can't just say, "Hey, stop recording me," right? It's a public place. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, that's true.
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I mean,
Well,
I get
again, the police should have it on until they are in an interaction with someone where that person requests for it to be turned off.
I think we should just keep it on regardless because it protects them. It protects us. You know
And
what I mean?
honestly, if the police officer has their highest integrity and the highest level of professionalism in mind, we've talked about it before, they should want it on. It protects them as well as the citizens. So sure,
For sure.
absolutely.
It's a unique circumstance. I admit, but I still want it to be the individual liberty of the person who's being recorded to have that right. I don't think,
mean, I
because at the end of the
understand.
day, if they can use that against you and you're trying to defend yourself and you feel like it's not being interpreted the right way, right? Because maybe that camera wasn't pointing in your direction at the beginning of the situation, and now you're trying to circle. I'm just playing devil's advocate, but I just feel
Sure.
like as somebody that believes in individual liberty, I don't want to be in a full videotape society if I don't wish to be. If I feel like,
Sure.
but it should be on us, the individual, not the police officers.
You
Yeah,
also
but
have to keep in mind too that something like a Walmart or a Target, they're a business, so the camera's not only on
Exactly. Yep.
to prohibit somebody's.
but everything is the public's property unless it's on your specific property sidewalk to your house. You know what I mean? So it is state's property, right?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the fine line. It's kind of like, where's the line drawn?
Yeah.
I
I'm going
understand
to err
civil
more on the
liberty.
side of freedom. Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree too. But the counter argument is, hey, look, it is state property, so you get
Right.
videotaped everywhere else. Why not have the
But
cops
inside
videotape you?
inside Walmart, you don't have to go inside Walmart. So that's why Walmart's allowed to record you. You go into Walmart, you don't have to go in, right?
Sure. So on the police, we
Mhm.
just heard that the cops and live PD was taken off the air. My argument is, let's show the public everything. Show them everything. That way they know exactly what the police have to deal with every day.
So that's an interesting one too. I mean, myself and my wife, we watch live PD.
Yeah,
It's entertaining. I think it is good for society, for overall society, for Americans especially, to be able to see what police go through. And you never know. But at the end of the day, I don't think that what a police officer goes through should dictate how they go into the next situation. And so I think that's kind of the argument there. But I do think it's good for the overall general public to understand what a police officer goes through on a day-to-day basis.
Show everything. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? Don't edit it. Put it on HBO.
It doesn't make any sense to me that they canceled both those shows, because I believe that if our goal is to have a better relationship between police and individuals, then watching those shows has definitely helps have a more personal look at what somebody's going through. So you tend to have more respect for a police officer as you're watching that, and you have a better appreciation of what they're doing. And I just don't see the downside in it. I don't think we go, oh, they're the end all be all, and that must mean they can never make mistakes. Like, I think that I don't like that over, dropping Gone with the Wind. I mean, I just feel like they've come up with really trying to stretch this thing out. And there's a lot of good coming from this stuff, but I think you got a handful of people out there virtue signaling their ass off, trying to make money off this in terms of showing how thoughtful and courageous they are by canceling stuff that's ridiculous. I mean, cops been on the air for whatever it was, 20-something years. I mean, I've never met anybody that doesn't every now and again flip on cops. I mean, and the argument was somehow that this is just white TV, and that's nonsense. Like, I mean,
negative. But hey, on that virtual signaling comment you just made, how about the Dems coming out taking a knee and wearing their little garments, huh? Glenn, what do you got to think about that?
I mean, I understand what they were trying to do. I don't agree with it. I'm going to be honest with you. If I want to show my sense of understanding or empathy for a certain situation or to a certain group or even to an individual, like take Kenny's Dads Matter, for example. Or it could even be White Dads Matter or anything. I'm not going to go and put on a pair of Crocs and some dad shorts.
Your New Balance, your white New Balance?
My 911s or
550s.
And think that somehow is going to show a sense of empathy or understanding for what it is that they're going through or what it is they're trying to spread awareness to. I mean, I get it, but I think it was a little insensitive there for sure.
Well, here's the deal, right? I think, Kenny, you can chime in after this. I think just before that, a lot of argument was, hey, Trump was taking this opportunity to photo op with the Bible out front of the church. And then no more than like 2-3 days later, we get a photo op of everybody taking a knee. Like, wait a minute. Wasn't that just wrong 2-3 days beforehand?
I think the difference there is when you bring religion into play, it's definitely a different thing. Taking a knee because a knee was part of a protest, that can sort of show a sign of solidarity, and I think that's what they were going for. I wouldn't really put that in the same category, in my opinion. That's apples to oranges in terms of photo
Kenny,
ops.
what's the counter argument?
So, well, first of all, if it was just the knee, I still would have kind of laughed it off in terms of, to me, I just look at the person and go, you guys have been there for 30 years. Like, if you wanted to fix it with legislation. You've been there. You've had the opportunities. You didn't do shit. Now, all of a sudden, you care. Spare me.
Right.
But at least with the knee, I would have been like, all right, they're playing that card. That's fine. The guard bothered me. I'm like, come on. And then, look, if you're going to take a knee in an orchestrated event with the kente cloth on, right? And then you can't get up off your knee. Maybe you should have rethought how dumb you're gonna look when you gotta beg for somebody to give you a hand up. Like, I don't know if she had knee pads on underneath her outfit or what, but I just I'm gonna call it out. I thought the Donald Trump thing, I understood what he was trying to accomplish by showing strength in front of the church, but it was 100% a photo op, no doubt about it. And then the protest there where they got gas and stuff, they did that for a photo op. They knew the president was coming. They knew what they were doing. That was their counterpunch to his counterpunch. So I just think, and what bothers me is that for those of us who are not racist, and I don't care if people go, you can't say you're not racist anymore, right? Well, spare me, right? If I'm going to stand here and go, okay, I'm always going to try to figure out what is best for society, and I have a special spot in my heart for the African American community, and I want to be a help, not a hindrance, then we have to be able to be fair. We can't have. Can you imagine if Donald Trump would have came out in that same get up and would have taken a knee? They would have crucified him. There would have been no coming back from that. It would have been racist, cultural appropriation. You name it, it would have happened. So if you can't both do it, then I'm going to laugh at it. So
I think if Donald Trump would have simply came out and taken a knee, that would have been different. The kente cloth, that's a little. And
that's kind of what I thought in my head in terms of he probably, it would have been. I actually don't think it would have been a bad move for him to do the knee. But the cloth would have been the thing that I'm like.
So let's segue here into Donald Trump, right? So today he just confirmed the first black chief of the U.S. military service. I think his name was Charles Brown, right? Charles Brown Jr. So was that a political move or an anti that I'm not racist move? What do y'all think about that? Did he come out and do that to save his hide, or did he come out to do that to be like a true, hey, this man deserves this position?
I think it depends on who you ask. I think if you ask the rights, they're going to say either the right wing of things. They're going to say, hey, that was Donald Trump's true feelings. He gave him that position based on his merit. I think if you ask people on the left, they're going to say, oh, he's just kind of doing it to save his own ass. CYA. So
sure,
it just depends on who you ask there. Me personally, I'm kind of in the middle. I do believe that he did it more to save his own. You know what? And that's just what I think there. But I do think he does deserve the position. Absolutely.
Well, to me, it's really kind of undebatable because this situation happened before. He nominated him on March 2nd. So he nominated him before the Breonna Taylor thing happened. So, I mean, this was before these acts. So people making that argument, it's just a poor argument because it doesn't hold up. He clearly, now you could say he was trying to get black votes, right? He was certainly still running for president in March. And it was after the economy started to, take a serious hit in late February, early March. So you could make that argument, but that's a better argument to make than basing it off just lately covering his ass because he, like I said, he nominated him on March 2nd. I don't even think it should have taken this long. The guy has a great long history of productive things. One of the things that I did want to say about the Justice and Policing Act, and I just want to kind of get back to that about a couple of things, is one of the things is they wanted to make lynching a crime. Okay, and there was actually a lynching bill called the Emmett Till Anti-Lynching Act. Okay, and I just want to, me personally, not the show, but me personally, want to give out a shout out to Rand Paul, because I was very proud of him, not because he's against the bill. I actually think there's a lot to like about the bill. I think there's a lot he likes about it. But when I went through it, and actually not to put Glennon on the spot, but Glennon, what is your belief as what the definition of lynching is? Because I'm going to be honest with you, I had to Google it because my understanding of what I thought it was, I was way wrong. So I just wanted to see if you had a general idea of what lynching itself is without Googling, just because that word has been something that we've said for so long.
Well, there's our dictionary definition right there, boys.
Okay, so I can't see it in full. Can you read that for me, Fred?
Yeah,
yes, sir. I can't see it in full. But
it says verb, to put to death, especially by hanging, by mob action, and without legal authority.
Okay, so when I looked it up, I looked at, I don't know what that one was. I looked up Merriam-Webster's, and it said basically the act of policing somebody basically without giving them due process. I actually always thought lynching was hanging. I just thought it was, like, I guess because of all
and on the surface, yeah. And on the surface, that's what it is. The actual term lynch comes from William Lynch, and I'm sure we're all familiar with the Willie Lynch letter. That's where the term comes from, where he gave his address to the colonies in 1713 or 1712 in regards to how to keep your slaves in order. And so that's where the actual term lynching comes from. In my opinion, what do I think lynching means? I think it is exactly that. It is prosecuting somebody without giving them their due process, mainly based on the account of race or social status or the lack thereof.
And I think this is the problem, though, Kenny. We talked about this earlier. Maybe you want to speak more about it. How, like, with everybody having a different definition, how do we address this, like, when it comes down to, like, legal?
Well, that's why I guess my stance is I'm just straight up with Rand Paul. If we can define it within the law, closely as we possibly can, then we really do have something that people can be confident in. The problem is we don't want to have the same thing that happened. We're talking about the Ahmaud Arbery case, right? If you're going to defund the police department, and then in Minnesota, I believe they said that they're going to disband it, and then all of a sudden we're going to have people policing the area, and then if a white person tries to police it, all of a sudden it could be lynching, because that would definitely fit under the definition. So it's very dangerous to have and it's funny because when I first read the M&T bill, the first thing that came across my mind was actually not even that it wasn't defined. My first thing was only 10 years. I'm like, if somebody lynches somebody, and again, I thought lynch meant hanging. I'm like, if you hang somebody, right?
Isn't that a hate crime?
In jail for life. Like, why are we talking 10 years? And then I was like, well, let me find the definition. And that's how I actually got to that point. I didn't even know that Rand Paul disagreed with it until I did some more research later. So I'm looking, I'm like, where's the definition? Like, just define it. It doesn't have to be exact, but get it in there so that we don't have somebody that chases somebody down and tackles them because they were robbing their brother's house. And because it's a white guy and a black guy, now we have a lynching where this guy is going to be going to jail when he wasn't doing anything wrong in an area where the police are disfunded. So
I think that's kind of like, I mean, I understand what you're trying to say, but I think that's kind of so far from the scale. I mean, that's a little far-fetched, let's be honest. In general, most people, when they think of lynching, they think of a prejudiced white person performing a hate crime against a black person because of what they
think. Then just put it in the bill.
Me personally, when I heard lynching, I think it's like a bunch against one. That's what I think of.
Well, it used to be in 1929 when I think that's when
it's usually like a lynch mob. That's where you get lynch mob from.
Sure.
Yep. And that's where it used to have to be 5 people. And so, to me, I'm actually okay with actually increasing the 10 years on. I just want it better defined because, again, this is
lynching is kind of a hate crime, though, isn't it?
No, it is.
It is.
Right.
Absolutely.
And we do have laws for hate crimes, don't we?
And that kind of goes to show the systemic racism that lynching would only be 10 years a prison sentence.
That's why I want, let's clearly define it so that we can go harder on it.
I mean, at the end
But
of the day, it's murder. You would think it would at least carry a 40-year minimum.
that's what I was. Well, again, but that's why I was like 10 years for murder, but then it didn't come up as it actually being murder. So if they define it as a person dying, well, then I think the minimum should be expanded. Certainly.
Speaking of Chicago, did either of you guys hear the interaction between the mayor and the alderman? The phone call that was supposedly leaked, where they exchanged some heated words?
I do.
You did hear about it.
That was of course, absolutely. So there's several aldermen, just in case people don't know, aldermen they're just city councilmen.
So let me play the clip. Let me play the clip. It's not in its entirety, but it does give us a little bit of the background. So it's only a minute long. So let's just hear it real quick. Here we go. Right, you ready to hear this? I'm bringing it up. There we go. These are the finest men and women I've ever met. I mean, if you forget that again, and then Truck 7, UFC Truck 7, that lost so many members on 9/11. Sean, they turned out of the precinct I used to work in 7-5. You know how often I think to myself when I was a young rookie police officer, how many of those guys I walked by? I was a rookie, they probably didn't say much to me because they were next door, that I casually walked by the parking lot of the 7.
Is that what it's supposed to be, Fred?
Yeah, it's very faint.
Fred, since the audio is not great, can you kind of summarize it?
So basically what they were saying is, so the alderman was like, hey, look, I'm worried. I'm in charge of my little town. I've been elected to be the voice of my town. My people are scared. I've got gangbangers with AK-47s. They've done loot at the area. All the looting that's done at the stores is done. So now the rural area is really worried, Mayor, and we didn't protect the businesses. What are we going to do to protect our citizens in their own homes? Because it's coming. All right. And he had videotapes and at least of 10 shootings of innocent bystanders just in his own little area. So now the mayor went on the defensive and said, look, if you're saying that we weren't prepared, you're full of shit. And then he came back and said, Mayor, all due respect, blank you. You know what I'm saying? Like, and then they went into interactions like you heard it, beep, 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 beep. So, I mean, and basically what he said was, if you don't believe me, if you don't think I know my town's heartbeat, come down here and look at it. Take a firsthand view. And then, so, I mean, what do y'all think? Do you think he's just BSing, or do you think he's trying to say, Mayor, we need help?
I mean, definitely the city of Chicago has been plummeted with looting. I don't think anybody's going to deny that fact. I don't necessarily agree with the way that, I've seen Fox News and a few other media outlets paint this phone call. For one, this phone call was a private phone call. I heard like Tucker Carlson trying to say that there were kids and children and things on the line. This was illegally leaked, and there were several aldermen. You're talking over 30 councilmen on this call. And I think because of the leak, what it actually has done for the city of Chicago is it's kind of inhibited people from wanting to speak, and from wanting to voice their opinion. And it's impeding progress, essentially. In terms of the actual conversation in and of itself, yeah, I think that that was Alderman Lopez specifically that was talking to
yes, sir. Yep.
To Mayor Lori and
Mayor Lightfoot.
Yeah, Lori Lightfoot. And yep. I agree with both sides. I think that Mayor Lightfoot probably shouldn't have went on the defensive as quickly, but I do understand why she would have gone on the defensive, especially in terms of, and I almost thought that she was going to get into the way that the city has been treated and the misfunding, because, I don't know if you guys know, but she tried to get funding when this whole pandemic started, and they prohibited her from getting funding in order to try to give funding to the people of Chicago, almost in terms of like a stimulus, if you will. So she's been impeded in a lot of ways. I think she probably felt personally attacked, but yeah, it doesn't look good.
Kenny?
Yeah, first of all, I'll just go ahead and put this out there. I'm not a fan of ever leaking conversations that shouldn't be leaked.
Sure.
Now, I do think that if this is an older man speaking to the mayor, I think those conversations should be public. But if
And
it was
I'm pretty sure that, like, I heard on another video where one of the other aldermen were like, "Hey, ladies and gentlemen, let's tone it down a little bit because we do have women and children listening to this." So I don't know if it was extremely public, but I think it was. Like, you could, if you were.
I'm just speaking Kenny Beats' opinion in terms of I don't know whether it was or not.
Sure.
If it was supposed to be out there, I have no problem with it being out there. If it's one of these leaked situations, I think it should have been public, but I still don't think you leak something that should be public. Same reason that, I feel the way I do about military things like that. I think if it's supposed to be private, until we change that, then it should be private. You shouldn't be leaking this for political points. I don't like getting into that kind of stuff. I think there's a lot of nuance to it. People are going to have very, passionate views. Mayor is more of a politician on a little bit bigger level, and so they've got to juggle multiple neighborhoods with multiple different demographics and things like that. It's a difficult job to handle, especially in this environment. And so I'm not making excuses for her or him. I think they both were passionate, which shows me that they care about their people. So from that, I'll just learn more about it and don't want to speak too much on something that I'm not that versed on.
Okay, so recapping okay, go ahead, Glenn. Go ahead.
Yeah, just really quick, and just to kind of switch topics really fast because there's so much that's going on in the country.
Sure.
I know we talked about defunding the police. I keep seeing these posts that keep coming up. People just don't understand what defunding the police really means or what its intent is. People are just really sticking to the surface of what it sounds like, which it sounds like dismantling the police or no police.
News, Glenn. The news is what's scaring people.
Like that. Yeah,
the
but
news
not
is what's
just
scaring
the
people.
news. When you had the leader of that section of Black Lives Matter that was in Minnesota shouting down the mayor saying, "Will you completely abolish the police? Yes or no?" So that was not a matter of can we defund and move some money from here to there. That situation, they literally, and then they voted to disband the military. So that goes a lot further than what you had said in the last video and what things defunding the police can mean in terms of, and I'm not saying that every city is thinking that defund means the same thing, but there have been leaders within the movement that have made it real clear that means no police.
So yeah,
that's not the overall general. That's not what it was originated to do.
Let's go into that though, right? Let's go into that though, right?
Sure.
So what is defunding? Does that mean abolishing the police force?
What does that?
No. What it means is it's an invest in divest model essentially. So what it means is that they're going to divest funds from the police department and then reinvest those funds into things like mental health issues, addiction, social services, which I think it would be a good thing. And we talked about it in the last episode. I think that would ultimately cut back on crime because over 25% of inmates that are locked up have some sort of a mental health condition. So I think if we invest more into that, then we would certainly see a reduction in crime. Not only that, but I think, I don't really want to say less police, but certainly less laws on the books would further benefit the effects of defunding the police also, because less laws on the books would then mean less police interaction, would actually give police more time to receive proper training, and then they're also interacting with people for more serious offenses instead of misdemeanors or a fake $20 bill or something like that.
So and I agree with Glenn's version of defunding. The problem is I haven't seen a leader come out. De Blasio is kind of there, it seems like, with the same definition.
Mayor, the mayor of Los Angeles has came out with that. He actually he said he is officially defunding the LAPD $150 million and reinvesting that into mental health issues as well as social services.
Right. What I haven't heard is what that means in terms of police forces, which again, I am totally in favor of if we have
Gavin Newsom, by the way, Gavin Newsom.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, that's the governor.
The
Oh
governor.
yeah, my fault.
That's
It
the
was
governor.
That's the governor.
yeah,
I know who you're talking
it's
about, though. I read about that.
Garcetti.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
Garcetti.
There you go.
Yep, correct.
My fault.
And my concern with that is simply that unless you're moving what we've discussed on this show, where if you're moving some misdemeanors down to finable offenses where you're not going to necessarily need police interaction with those things, and if you're decriminalizing some of those things, then I think we could have a really good situation. And again, that's based on data from New Jersey and Camden, where they did some things and it worked. And so, but my problem is I have not heard anybody say, hey, we're going to decriminalize these certain things. We're going to make some less laws so that our law enforcement agents are not ultra taxed. If we just think we're going to take away the money from the legal system and then keep the same laws in the books, these cops are still going to be pulling you over looking for a quarter pound of weed so they can throw you in jail. I mean,
so defunding, I think, is what the intent is to, like, you know, take away the military grade weaponry from certain individuals on the law force, right? Like, if you're just the normal cop that's supposedly doing like highway patrol, you don't need the M4 or the M16. You know what I mean? You're just policing the highway. Whereas if someone's doing like drug busts where they're going into a house, maybe they might need a little bit higher weaponry depending on who you're going after in said house. You know what I mean? Like if it's just, you know, hey, a guy that has a warrant and he has a little bit of a past of fighting against the police, but no weapon charges, I still don't think you need the high weaponry to go into that person's house. Now, if you're dealing with the drug kingpin, okay.
For sure. And that's where it comes down to, we've got to reassess those limits. We've got to reassess some of these misdemeanors that we're doing simply to grab money. I thought, I don't know if you guys were able to see, and not to segue from that, if you had anything to add on that, Glenn, but I wanted to talk a little bit about Trump had a roundtable today with Daryl Scott, Ben Carson, Wayne Dupree, Raymond Jackson, Sonny Johnson, and then there was another gentleman, I can't remember his name, but they were kind of talking about some things, and I was actually really impressed with this lady named Sonny Johnson. I didn't know who she was, but I guess she's a talk show host, African American female, and she talked exactly about what my platforms have been in terms of changing the laws on the legalization of stuff and eliminating some of these misdemeanor type things so that we're not just defunding the police, but we're limiting police interactions, which is huge for the relationship that people have within the Black community with police officers. I thought she hit the nail on the head. And obviously, because we've been doing this, we have tape, but she almost literally aligns with everything that I was saying. I thought it was great when Trump, this is something that people are, you know, unless you pay attention and watch these things, you're going to have a misunderstanding of Trump. One of the things that Trump's best at, and this is from, even though I am a Trump supporter, for people that don't like him, there's something they got to realize about him. He talks to people that he respects. He shuts up. He just listens. He let Miss Johnson go on, and she was ranting, and she was hot to trot. He just sat there, listened. He let the next person go. He just listened. And I actually think he wants to solve this. I really, really, really do. I will bet a steak dinner to anybody who wants to bet me that he is going to come out with a solution that he feels is validated, not from himself, from these Black leaders, because he's going to meet in Texas tomorrow with some more. And he wants to solve, because he wants his name in lights. Whether you want, you know, like him or hate him, he's a populist. He wants to be popular. He wants to solve these problems that have been in Washington for years.
As long as he doesn't tweet or open his mouth about it, right, Glenn?
Right. Yeah, as long as he can shut up about it. And I agree with what you said. My only problem there is he only shuts up for people that he respects. right? So
True.
you don't necessarily have to respect somebody to hear them out or hear their opinion and be genuine. But, that's just a character thing. But I do agree with everything that Sonny said. Absolutely. I saw that today as well. And it was spot on with what we talked
Sounded
about pretty much on
familiar,
the
right?
last 2 episodes. Well, yeah, we both talked about it.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I agree. I also think that along with the Police Justice Act of 2020, this is the thing. Well, you had Congressional Black Caucus Chair Karen Bass. You also had Democratic leaders and senators Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, and then you had, of course, the Judiciary Committee Chair Gerald Nadler. They're the ones that actually introduced the bill. So I think this is the first piece of real legislation that's coming out of this entire movement, and I think it's great. And so if they can implement everything that was talked about today at the roundtable, along with this act, because what this act does is it's really meant to hold police officers more accountable. It's meant to strengthen the trust between police officers and the community, and I think in general it's going to provide way more transparency from police officers. So I think that together, collectively, all of that will work to have a better policing culture and change the policing culture from what we know it as.
I
Sure.
will tell you one concern that I have, that I hope isn't a sticking point, is that I do have some issues with going after the leaders of going after government officials via the basically suing them. I just think it really opens up Pandora's box, because a lot of times, even if you lose when you sue somebody, there's just so much rigmarole that you end up going through. It costs society a lot of money, and I just feel like it will free flowing. There will be the law offices of me, him, and her, and they will be attacking all day, every day. So I feel like there has to be some bend in that one, but I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. I actually am glad that Democrats put together a bill before Trump came out with one. And the reason why I like that is because one of the things that people don't recognize is that when Trump did the crime bill adjustment to the sentencing, he did that with a lot of bipartisan support. They didn't want to talk about it, right? And yes, it was led by Trump, who got the idea from Kardashian, really. And Kanye.
Yeah.
So they came in, he listened, he brought it before Congress. Congress was like, yeah, we've been trying to do that. And to their credit, some of them had, right? But they hadn't followed through with it. He said, hey, let's get it done. It got done. I think they can do that here too. And I think it can be good for the American people, as long as, and we know at the end of the day, both sides will take credit, right? Trump will say, look what I did. Democrats will say, look what I did. But at the end of the day, for us, for three guys that care about their country and care about
it's progress.
People, it is progress. It is progress. And I think it's a step in the right direction. I think it actually holds some people accountable. And I'm pretty excited about what I think maybe on the doorstep of happening. And I don't like that I was listening to CNN today on the radio, and they said, but we have a president who won't listen to anything. And I just disagree with that. And that narrative is just not true. If they come up with good stuff, I actually think we can get a lot of these things. I think the anti-lynching, define it, pass it. Okay? I think we can get this, throw in some of those adjustments. I loved what they talked about in that roundtable when it came to a bunch of stuff that you don't hear from Black Lives Matter, like making sure the money for the revitalization goes to the people in the inner cities. Now, I have a business partner who is Black and is taking advantage of it. He's working with it. I mean, these types of things are progress, but making sure it stays in these areas and making sure that these people have the asset, the access to it that it's meant to have, and that continually building. And I even like what the one guy said. He says, Trump, you got to roll through there sometime and say, hey, let's talk about this. And they got to see you and feel that you're caring about them in this situation and actually doing it. And if Trump, if you go back to reading his books and stuff from back, that's what he used to do. I mean, that's one of the reasons why a lot of the people on the ground, the construction workers, actually his subcontractors didn't like him, but that's another story for another day. But the people who were on that were Boots people, they really liked him because he would just show up on job sites and buy people pizza and do these kind of things that you didn't expect from this multimillionaire, even though he really wasn't a multimillionaire then, he was a lot poorer than people think. But that boosts people, man. When your boss comes out and you feel like he's got your back, man, you work. It's a different recognition, and I'm looking forward. I'm very hopeful on some of that stuff.
Absolutely. So, did you have something, Fred? Really quick.
I was going to say, yeah, go ahead.
No, okay. I was just going to say, I mean, while we're on the subject of Trump, because I think we pretty much are in agreement there with everything that's happening with the movement. And I think that America is really taking this opportunity to come together. I did sort of want to turn to, because Trump used part of Candace Owens' speech in his speech or address to the nation, whatever you want to call it. I don't really agree with that. And I don't know if you guys saw it. Again, I don't really agree with much
which speech.
He had gave a it wasn't really like a speech. He had gave like a 5-minute excerpt, if you will, yesterday to the nation, and he was just pretty much talking about like basically accountability for Black people, and he used like Candace Owens' speech in there. You guys can pull it up really quick if you want to.
Okay.
But
Yeah,
I just wanted to say really fast that because there's some things that I agree with Candace Owens, again, that she says, but this rant, I don't agree with it at all. And then again, she kept saying that the Black community has an issue with pandering to the lowest common denominator. There's no George Floyd award. Like, I don't understand where this whole idea is coming from. Like, there's no, and then she also went on to further say that no other race or no other culture does this. And I'm like, well, damn, like there's slave owners on our money. There's still Confederate flags being flown around. There's still Robert E. Lee high schools, and there's all sorts of buildings and even churches that are named after slave owners and people that did not so good things. And not saying that you have to walk around and be an angel your entire life, but I'm talking like bad people, like people that like in history, like we would say are bad people, like that are written in the history books as bad people. We have monuments of these people. So I don't really like, it's just like, did she do her research when she was doing the speech?
So I don't know if we need the monuments, but we need to teach our kids about the history so that way we don't repeat it.
So we don't repeat it.
The argument,
and here's the other thing.
The argument I always hear is that if you tear that down, you're tearing down history, and then we're going to be destined to repeat it. Well, that might be true if we don't teach our youth. But if we teach our youth, we don't have to put it in front of everybody's face and shove it down their throat and remember this individual. As long as we're being taught, I think we don't need the statues. But we do need to learn about our history so we don't repeat it. And I think that's the bigger issue, is we're not being taught. Like, if you ask any of the youth who was the 16th president, they'll probably say, George Washington. You know what I mean? Like, it's terrible.
Here's the tough discussion, right? And I'll probably get some criticism for this, but the problem is also, not every, nowadays, right? If somebody were to have slaves, we say that person is definitely a bad person, no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But throughout history, this is how, they would go to war with each other, these two tribes. This tribe would lose. This tribe would then become, it's the same stories in the Bible. They would become slaves to this person. Then this person would have those slaves under their rule. Then eventually they became the slave trade after that, where they would trade these people. All this stuff is despicable, right? But at that time, if everyone was, this is the same people that were having slaves, and we're going back now, right? Historically, the same people that had slaves would, if they lost wars, become slaves themselves. And so everything at that point was what was good for the goose was good for the gander. That was the way it worked. Then we became a more civilized people. Now we look back and we go, that was asinine. That was ridiculous. But it doesn't necessarily mean those people.
And I'm glad, and really quick, and I don't want to cut you off, but I'm glad that you said that. We became a more civilized people. So, and you brought up the fact that, when a tribe would lose to another tribe, then that tribe that lost would then be enslaved. You do know that that's not the case in terms of America, right? Like you know that like there wasn't a war, like they just
correct.
The slave trade was going on.
But the
like
slave
totally
trade,
bad intentions, like nobody lost and enslaved anybody or anything like that.
But that's why I said specifically they started trading those slaves. So that was the history. America didn't come over to Africa and steal their slaves, right? These people from Africa were selling them almost like currency. And again, that was because they devalued human life. These were people of some of the same colors, some of different colors. Depends on, again, who won in their battles. And then they were sending them. Again, completely wrong. And it's disgusting. But we look back on it, and again, we've talked a little bit about this before, but Black people, some of them owned slaves as well. And it's not about who had the slaves, because slave owners were in the wrong, but it is a different time now. So we look at things through the prism, and I'm just bringing it up because I think sometimes we assume that they had the same understanding and ideas that we have now, and we're saying, hey, this was, these people were all horrible. It's like, well, then everyone for like 1,000 years was horrible. All of them. And so
my argument to that, for sure, and my argument to that, again, just like Fred said, the history we obviously want to teach so that it's not repeated. But again, I don't believe we need the monuments. You're not going to go to Germany and find a monument of Hitler. It's just not going to happen, right? He was a bad person. He was an oppressor. He slaved people.
Correct.
Exactly.
Well, if you're not going to find
Nazi flags waving like you're going to find Confederate flags waving over here.
I think Robert E. Lee was a military mind that was like, he was a great military mind, and I think that's what they were trying to convey, but it was lost in translation. You know what I mean?
Look, and I'm more open-minded on this than I think.
Yes.
The president is in this circumstance. But for me, somebody that was at Fort Bragg, I didn't look at, some of those things do have some meaning to people, and just because these people have certain things that were flawed. Not everyone that was fighting in behalf of the South, even though slavery was a part of it, was inherently this evil individual. It's not like it was all, we were all, a lot of times, too often, I think we're taught it's like good guys versus the bad guys. Now, of course, freedom is better than slavery. No debate, of course, all day. Okay. But I just think there is some nuance to the discussion, and I'm okay with them getting rid of certain things. I want to make people feel comfortable, but it does concern me. Hold on, I want to get this one point out.
Sure.
Because it does concern me that if we say, hey, hold on, anyone who ever owned slaves, it's like, well, there goes our dollar bill. There goes the presidents all the way up until Lincoln. I mean, all of a sudden, some of these people who had this flaw, but they had this flaw because it was a societal flaw, and we're going to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Some of those things that they did we may never have America. And, that's the sad truth, is that we have to look in the mirror and say, our good and our bad both make us who was, even for us three, right? We don't want, and we've talked about this before, right? We don't want our past, that one incident, to all of a sudden go, this person cannot be memorialized if you've tried to do as much good as you've done based on the circumstances around you. It's a tough discussion to have, and I totally understand where people come from it, and I think there needs to be a conversation, which it seems like we're starting to have in this country with Antifa aside. In my opinion, Antifa aside, you can start having some nuanced conversations. And
what do you think about the since you brought up Antifa really fast, what do you think about President Trump's tweet in regards to the 75-year-old guy? I mean, do you think that Antifa is just creating 75-year-old men and marching them into protesting?
I got to be honest, I agreed with him before he said it, so I can't say that I disagree with it now, because I told you I didn't think the shove was real. He just all of a sudden, I brought that up in the conversation we had yesterday, so I can't, or 2 days ago, so I can't say now. What?
I mean, you saw the tape, though, right?
Yeah.
I know you saw the tape. So the shove was very real. I mean, you think that 75-year-old man acted?
No. I'm not saying that. If you remember when we were talking about it, might have even been off camera. I said big man fell hard, and I said it didn't even look like he barely pushed him, and he was 11 feet tall, and he just fell straight back. I mean, I watched the video. I was shocked that he fell like that. Do I think he fell on purpose? No, that would be stupid. A 70-year-old doesn't fall on purpose. But was he an agitator? Yes, he's a known agitator. We talked about that in the discussion 2 days ago. This guy is a known agitator. Should the guy have pushed him? I said that no, he shouldn't have. And Trump's McAvaney came out and said that he doesn't think that. He does think he's part of Antifa. I do too. This 70-year-old guy didn't just decide to do this. Like, he was
Well,
bucking
he's been a protester. He's always rallied and protested for racial and social injustice. He's known for doing that. You got to be careful of your words. I would call him a protester. I wouldn't call him an agitator. He has throughout his protest, I'm sure he's agitated
the stormtroopers. I mean, come on. I mean,
well, he didn't run towards them. I mean, he was standing there. He didn't move when they asked him.
He was the only one in the picture, which leads me to believe he was the only one that was trying to agitate, as opposed to, and again, I'm not saying you don't have the right to, but when they're clearing the area, when you've already set that standard, he's the only one in the freaking picture, right? I mean, everyone else.
That's another argument too, because it's like, okay, police decide that they want to clear the area, but it is the citizens' First Amendment right to protest their government for as long as they want to.
That's true.
So who's really wrong there? You know, like the police are just. I
think Kenny's point is that they were trying to clear the area so everybody could be safe. You know what I mean?
Nobody wants to answer that question either. Nobody wants to have that discussion either.
Hey, Glenn, if that's the argument you're making, I'll stand behind that. I mean, I don't like the curfews. Okay, I understand why they do them.
Absolutely.
But again, I don't like the curfews because, again, I'm a First Amendment guy. So I would rather somebody be able to stay in the street.
Nothing good happens after 10 o'clock. We've all been taught that.
So my mom told me, and she's right. I got 6 kids.
Right. Hey, so what do you guys think about Floyd? Did you hear about this? The family lawyer is asking for the UN to intervene in America's problems. Is that a good thing? I mean, I don't know.
It's
so they asked for the UN to essentially to unarm the United States police.
So a foreign military force is going to come into America and disarm our police force.
Big move right there. I'm going to be honest.
Let me explain how smart
I don't agree with that.
Right?
Before I say I don't wholeheartedly agree, I would want to get more information on exactly the details that are in that dissertation. I don't know enough about it to say I wholeheartedly disagree, but I do know what the headlines are saying. But we all know that headlines aren't, or they're like a half truth.
I would concede to that. I do want to. I want to take my. I'm gonna do what Glenn does, and I'm gonna be completely real, and I'm gonna say something that I didn't like that Trump did, because this is where shit gets lost, and it really bothered me. So I'm gonna bring up, right. So this is definitely something Trump did that I didn't like, and it was a tweet. And I do think his tweets. I actually am different than most people because I actually wish he would tweet more, only because the media is so dishonest. But he has to be very careful because when he tweets, I know that it came from his mouth. And one of the things he said, and I quote, "Far fewer protesters showed up last night than anticipated." Now, that seems like a very simple line, but I'm going to tell you why I didn't like that and I didn't appreciate it. This is when he was talking about sending the not the Army, but the National Guard home, okay? I felt like it was a stab at the size of the protest, and I know Trump well enough to know that he judges everything based on the size of the protest. And I think that's the total wrong message. I think he should have been encouraging, since it was a peaceful protest, instead of finding a way to take a mini jab at them for the size of the protest. I think that is going to more likely lead to somebody going, oh, well, we're not being heard, and try to make it a different way. So I would speak out to him to definitely say I didn't like that at all. I think it's the wrong message, the wrong ideal. I would much, much rather him be strong when it's need to be, and when there's no need to be, then support the First Amendment right of every person, whether you agree with what they're saying or not. And if it's a peaceful protest and you're going to send the military back home, well, good. That's a win for everybody. They get to be heard. You didn't have to do that. There's no, buddy hurt or anything. So I definitely was not happy that he said that. And, I'm always going to side with the First Amendment. Now, if nobody's respecting the First Amendment, if you're going to have curfews and stuff and enforce those, then okay, then go by the law. But my stance on it is going to be that we shouldn't have that. So I'm not in favor of those things.
All right, so let's get into some of our users' comments that have been tuning in and listening to this show, right? I think we had Nikki Nixon ask a question about our history discussion, and I'm trying to find uh, the exact comment she left behind. I think it's right here.
About
Right
history
here.
not working for her.
Well, no. Well, I think it was more on involve. Let's see. I think it was basically more or less a history class. We can teach history, but do we have to teach racism? And when I find the comment, I'll put it up. But she was saying, hey, let's teach all history, but can you teach history without racism? Or what do you think?
Well, me
Well,
personally, I think teach it all, right? Teach the angle that there was mass amounts of racism. Teach the angle that there was people that didn't believe there was as much, and then add the nuance and let people consider it for themselves. That's mine.
yeah, I don't believe that you can teach history, especially in
Without
America,
racism, can't do that.
without racism. It would just be disingenuous.
Right.
I mean, it's so ingrained in our society. As much as I hate to say it, it is what it is. I mean, look, there's so much racism that when black people say Black Lives Matter, people say all lives matter or blue lives matter. It's crazy. It's not like when you have a breast cancer awareness day, you don't get people saying, well, what about colon cancer
Right. But
or skin cancer?
again,
I mean,
I feel like
all
that was
cancers
so
matter.
kidnapped. I think if that message
It's
was
like
not
it doesn't.
kidnapped like it was, I don't think All Lives Matter would have ever came out. I really don't.
Yeah,
I,
yeah, exactly. And I agree with that too. I think it was kid. And look, but that's racism in and
But
of
you're right.
itself.
I mean, it's
I
tough.
mean, anytime
You don't know.
somebody gets the opportunity, there's just opportunists out there that are going to take an opportunity to take anything that means progress for Black society in America and try to misconstrue it in some sort of a way or try to spit on it or flick their nose at it in a sense. And yeah, the short answer is no. You can't teach American history without explaining racism.
Right.
I
Nah,
think
for sure.
yeah.
you can teach American history explaining racism, but explaining
And
obviously how
I think
negative it
our
is.
education I think our education falls way short in history altogether.
Well,
I
we don't
mean,
teach how to learn perspective. Like, for example, and I'll keep this real short, but let's say, one day I brought my daughter with me and she wanted to play basketball. So we put up to this court and there was this little black kid out there, man, and he was working it, right? I mean, he was out there just by himself working. And I seen his dad kind of walking down and he was kind of showing him how to shoot. And I'm just watching. And I thought, you know what? What if their encounters with white people were terrible and they looked over and were like, why is this dude's probably judging me like he doesn't even want to bring his daughter on the court because I'm out here. He may believe that. And if he believes that, that is his reality. That's what's hard, is that he didn't know that I was like, I was so impressed by how hard this little kid was working and by watching his dad stand away. I was just watching the father-son relationship, but he doesn't know that, right? And so sometimes there is clearly racism. Sometimes there is clearly not racism. And sometimes there's a whole bunch of what we're guessing that other people are thinking. I saw an MMA fighter that's black the other day say, man, you don't know how many people walk on the other side of the street as me. Well, I mean, depending on how big and strong you look, it might not have anything to do with your color. But if you believe that is, then it is your reality. And so there's so much nuance to it. And we're not taught to think with much nuance. We're taught dichotomies. One way, or if you don't think that way, you must think that way. And it's one
I,
of the reasons why I
I
love
think
this
the
show.
education system doesn't teach us how to have a conversation. Like we're only taught to believe our way, and our way is the right way. And if you don't agree with my way, then I'm not listening. And that's the problem. Like you can have your point of
So
view, but listen to the other side, right, Glenn?
yeah, well, absolutely. And I just wanted to ask you guys a question for both of you guys. So do you think that like even today, I mean, we know a lot of people, we have a lot of friends, we pretty much have, we've got a lot of the same network. When
Mhm.
somebody says all lives matter, do you think that they are legitimately being racist, or do you think they just simply don't understand? Or like, what do you guys
So
think
let
there?
me start, Kenny. I think right now we need to realize everybody knows all lives matter. All lives
Thank you.
matter. We all know that. But
Obviously.
right now, the subject at hand is that we need the attention on the black lives right now. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's what we need, right? Kenny, what do you think?
Yeah, the only thing I would say is that I think there are some people that have crossed the line in terms of, yes, I totally get it. But like, so I don't like when I see the all lives matter stuff, but I think some people are all lives matter trying to anti the far left BLM organizational, where they got these people on their knees that we've seen, the guy that made that girl get on her knees and say, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. And they're combating that with all lives matter as their, because again, so much in society thinks there's these two lanes of thought, right? And so they think they're defending the fact that nobody should have to do that, right? I mean, I'm going to take the same stance for my whole life growing up. I've been anti-racism. I would throw blows for somebody if I ever thought somebody was being this racist piece of and those same ideals are now all of a sudden acceptable to some people, right? Like, we're going to judge people based on the color of their skin. We're going to hold them accountable for things they didn't do. The same thing that racist white people do, there's people doing on the left. And so some people with their all lives matter, that's just their way of standing up for what they believe is this injustice. Now, if you could get them to understand that, hey, fuck those people way out on the one side, and let's just talk about what we're really trying to talk about here. Let's put Black Lives Matter, the organization, to the side and actually talk about Black Lives Matter like I talk about Dads Matter. That same mattering, right? Like the actual mattering, most people, 95% of people that I talk to, maybe even higher than that, agree with that Black Lives Matter. And that is the discussion that we need to have. Unfortunately, because these organizations and the politics of it, and we get all that, they built a side. So that's kind of like the all matters rebuff to it. But I don't look at it as a racism as much as I look at it like, just like I don't feel like the left side's that race. I just feel like,
Glenn, I think that might be one issue, right? Because we're hearing all like Black Lives Matter, and then we see these instances where Chicago had what 50 some deaths, and the majority of them were black on black crimes, and no one's talking about that, right? But Black Lives Matter. So I think that's where you lose some of the audience when people are trying to convey this message, right?
Well, and not to
but
interrupt.
You got to question that as well too. Right. I mean, what is that really? I mean, black on black crime. I mean, is it white on white crime or white?
Sure.
I mean, there's all across the board. So I don't understand why it has to be like that sort of separation. But I think, in fairness, the reason why it is that separation is because we are now making a stance because black people have been so brutalized. Disproportionately, it happens to white people too, but disproportionately, black people have been so brutalized by the police that I think that's really where the movement comes from. So, in a sense, to say black on black crime, like I get it, right? And I say it all the time too. Like, look, black people can't be committing crimes against each other if we don't want anybody else to do it. And it's the same thing. Like, there has to be a sense of accountability there. I get it. One thing, just to kind of go back to Nikki's comment in terms of teaching and history and racism. People oftentimes try to lump racism and discrimination together. They're two different things. I think we talked about it a little bit off camera. And I just wanted to say this on camera. Like, anytime you make a decision or you don't make a decision based on somebody's skin color, that's racism. So like, if you come in and I'm looking to hire an employee and I say, I'm not going to hire this guy because he's white, that would be racism, right? Or I'm going to hire this person simply because they're black. That would also be racism, right? But again, if I'm looking to hire somebody and I've got 5 people all with the same credentials, they come in, 4 out of the 5 are in jeans and a t-shirt. One of the guys is in a tailored suit, Ferragamo shoes, smelling good,
you're going to pay more attention to him, right?
I'm going to pay more attention to that guy, but still that is a form of discrimination. I technically discriminated against the other 4 guys for not being dressed properly, and I went with the guy based on how he presented himself. That is so I think eventually we can get to the point where racism maybe doesn't exist, or it's very, very minimal.
And that goes into
discrimination
teaching,
will
right?
always be there. Yeah, discrimination will always be there for sure. And I think it does. It goes into teaching, but I think some discrimination, in a sense, like what I just gave, may be okay when we're discriminating against people because they're fat or they're skinny or they're short or anything like that. I don't agree with that sort of thing. But yeah, racism and discrimination, people always try to lump them together, and they're two totally different things.
And the only thing I wanted to say on that topic in terms of, with the black on black crimes and stuff, I think people, and myself included, sometimes I look at that and I go, man, if black people are killing 7,000 or 6,000 black people a year, and then you look at the cops and you go, okay, well, you're killing, 20. But I'm going to tell you this. At this point where we're at right now, we're having an issue that's been we can disagree on the amount of people dying from it and how big that issue is. But again, perception is reality. And every black person, most black people that I know have felt discriminated by police for their entire lives. So regardless of the data, if I just look at that fact that people do feel that way, and we can address that, then maybe we can get to the next level. And maybe the next level is actually even more productive than the first step. But you can't get there if everyone feels this way. And no matter how much data I might have, I can't say the data is more important than your feelings, because it's not. You feel it. So we have to put these accountabilities. At least if we have accountability and it happens, then the person can say, hey, let me go through my measures and try to hold these people accountable. And if enough people do it and there's enough checks on that person's box, then they did it. Right? If 100 black people think or 20 black people think you're racist towards them, maybe you are racist towards them. So, that type of thing, I think my call out to people who disagree with Glenn's point of view on this is that it doesn't matter. Let's take care of this step, because we actually are on the doorstep of doing something that hasn't been done. And we had a black president. We've had all these different politicians, Republicans and Democrats. For as long as I've been alive, this has been an issue that's been talked about since NWA in 84, 85. I mean, this thing has been always.
Over 100 years. Yeah, black people have been marching and asking for
and all I can really speak to is what I've seen in my life and what I've heard from people in my life. And so if that's been an issue that long, let's go ahead and address that issue. We can certainly, it's not like once we do this, we're like, I guess black on black crime can keep killing each other. Like, no. Maybe it changes attitudes. Maybe it changes what people want to do, so. But go ahead. I'll let y'all get to, closing statements are coming up.
Yes, sir. So before we get to the closing statements, let's see. We did have Zach Rourke make a comment here. I did post this up earlier, Jesse Jackson speaking out saying, hey, look, when I walk down the street, if I hear footsteps, I start thinking maybe there's a robbery about to happen behind my back. And then when I see a white guy, I feel a lot more relieved. I mean, is that discrimination or racism there, Glenn? What do you think?
I would that's one of the things I would technically say that's racism, because again, it has to do with the color of one's skin. A white person, and he doesn't really go into detail of. Sure. I'll be honest with you. I'm a person. I wear suits a lot. I'm always in tailored suits. I can tell you firsthand, I get treated a whole heck of a lot differently when I'm in a suit as opposed to when I'm just wearing
a
Nike tank top.
Yeah.
Right
hoodie.
now,
a hoodie,
or
and some
hoodie
Timbs.
or anything. Well, I think hoodie has been kind of stigmatized. I don't, we don't even have to say hoodie. Just anything other than a suit, and I'm treated like a typical black guy. When I have that suit on, when I've got like my Louis Vuitton on or my Rolex or anything like that, I'm treated differently. And I used to think it was just like a figment of my imagination. It's not. I'm given the benefit of the doubt with police. I'm treated better at restaurants. I'm treated better all the way around. And so that is discrimination, right? But with what Jesse Jackson just said, that would be considered racism. And you got to ask yourself why? Why would another black man, because Jesse Jackson is black, why would he feel relieved when he turns around to see that it's a white guy and not a black guy? I mean, I think that says something very negative about the black community if he really feels that way. And so I think that needs to be addressed as well. And I think that kind of goes back to some of the things that Candace Owens was saying.
Well, it's the same thing that Chris Rock said in his stand-up that everybody knows.
Yeah.
I mean, he said, when I'm going to the ATM at 2 a.m, I ain't looking over my shoulder for the media. Right. I mean,
yeah,
there is some truth to it. But again, I think it's important to keep our focus where it needs to be right now. I think that kind of stuff is meant to debate people away from solving the problem. I feel like we are closer to solving the problem today. I'm very hopeful that Trump is going to go down to Texas tomorrow. Democrats have already put some on the table. Thank God. I thought they weren't going to do anything ever. I was waiting and waiting and waiting. We were talking about it. Hopefully they watched the show and somebody was like, dude, we got to come up with some solutions. But somehow they came up with some solutions that I think a lot of them are pretty good. And I think Trump has a vested interest in making this happen. And yes, of course, the liberals are going to say that he did it to try to get votes. I don't give a shit. I don't care why somebody wipes my tail if my tail needs wiping. Just wipe it. We'll debate about it later.
Man, I love you guys, man. You guys come with the fire every night, man. You guys do your research and bring it out every night. Glenn, what do you got for closing arguments for me, boss?
Closing arguments. The Police Justice Act of 2020 gets 2 thumbs up and full total agreement with it. I like everything about it, and you can actually go online and read the entire legislation. I love it. I think police officers need to provide more transparency to the people. I think that building trust within the communities that they're policing should be their #1 priority. I think accountability, which we're starting to see now, we're starting to see a lot more of these police officers get fired, a lot more of them being charged and things like that, is awesome. Is awesome. One thing and we kind of touched on it in the last episode, but with more police officers being held accountable, we're actually starting to see more police officers quit. And in my opinion, I'm just going to go ahead and throw it out there, and I don't care what kind of criticism I get for this. If a police officer quits because they're being held accountable, they don't deserve to be a police officer in the first place.
They're worried about something.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're worried about something. They ain't doing something right. They're not being professional. It's absolutely just ludicrous to me that they would take that stance. So hats off to Karen Bass, Cory Booker, Kamala Harris, Judiciary Committee Chair Gerald Nadler. I think they did a great thing with introducing that bill. And then we've got the case of Democrats wearing kente cloth and kneeling. Love the kneeling, don't love the kente cloth. Think it was just a little overboard. I understand and I appreciate the empathy or the attempt of it, and the attempt of solidarity there, but kneeling was enough. Again, if I'm trying to show support for, let's say, Blue Lives, I'm not going to go and buy a police officer costume. I'm just not going to do that. I just there's a lot other things that people can do and that people want to see. And I think now, just in terms of all of the progress, just over the past 2 weeks since George Floyd's death that we're seeing, I've never seen anything like this in my entire life, where all 50 states have essentially come together and protested. Yeah, we've had looting and things like that, but the overall general consensus that's happened over the past 2 weeks, this country is finally ready for change. And hats off to our young people. The young people are really leading the charge. I mean, I'm seeing videos of young people arguing with their parents. The parents are saying racist statements that they don't even think is racist, and the kids are calling them out on it. So I just think that believe it or not like we're in a good time, but I think we're in a time of progress. We have a real opportunity to make some real changes that our kids and our children's children are going to benefit from. I'm absolutely loving it. And again, hats off to everybody that pushed forward for the Police Justice Act. I think it kind of piggybacks off the Sandra Bland Act that the Texas governor signed off on. And that's pretty much all I got for everybody. Kenny?
Yeah, I just want to, really point out to people that, it's interesting in this point in time where we're at as a society. There's a lot of things that the Black community is going through, and a lot of things that the white community is actually going through as well. And so I wanted to kind of talk to that a little bit. You don't have to get on your knees and beg somebody's forgiveness for something you did not do. Okay, you don't have to do that. And I stand every day and fight with those who are standing up for themselves in this discussion. But with that being said, it does not make sense to not listen and open up your heart to being compassionate to what other people are bleeding and feeling. Those things do matter. Now, you don't have to throw the facts out the door. You don't have to throw all your data out. It doesn't mean that your data isn't correct. But it still matters to listen. And my hope is that we can all listen to each other and come together as we've been seemingly doing. And I think it's getting better and better. And as we've continued to do this, my hope is that we can accomplish some things that people haven't done for a long time. And so these discussions, my hope is bringing people together. And it seems like it is bringing together. I appreciate that even though I was critical of Donald Trump earlier, I'm thankful that he brought up Sandra Bland and George Floyd today when talking about injustices that needed to be righted. And so I'm impressed that we can do this as a nation. It's one of the reasons why I love our country. I appreciate my, Fred and Glennon doing this show. And we appreciate all those people out there that want to hear different points of view, always coming from an honest place of love for our families, each other, the country, and hoping that we can accomplish these great things together, which I think we can. So thanks, everybody. That's all I got.
All right. So, yeah, just to go recap everything, I think police leave the cams on. There's no hurt in it. The more you show, the more the public will see, and maybe they'll understand. Maybe they won't understand. Don't listen to the news. All right. Don't listen to the news. It's scare tactics. They want us to argue all the time. If we come together, that'll be more scary for the government and us fighting. We're not going to accomplish anything fighting. Like Kenny said, we need to listen to one another. All right. Don't close off just because someone has a different viewpoint than you. I think that's when you should tune in. You should listen more. All right. Because maybe they have something to say that you didn't know. And it's not saying you have to change your point of view. It's just listen so that you can see the other side. Right. And I, like Kenny and Glenn both said, we appreciate all y'all tuning in, the comments, the feedback, the text messages, the IM. We love you all. And for all of us, Kenny, Glenn, Fred, keep coming back and leaving the comments. In America, stay safe. Wash your hands. We love you. Good night.